Before we start today, I have to tell you about State Farm agent Brian McDevitt. A lot of our listeners have gone to him for all their insurance needs, and he's been very helpful in getting them the coverage they deserve. There's no games with Brian. He's just here to help and make sure you feel safe. So if you have insurance needs and you haven't called him yet, what are you waiting for? Dial up that number, 630-796-2662. That's 630-796-2662. Or visit his website, brianismyagent.com. That's RyanIsMyAgent.com, and make sure to mention Sports Talk Chicago. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Sports Talk Chicago. Here with Jon Zaghloul, and we are back and ready for today's special guest. He's a senior fantasy football writer at CBS Sports and a contributor to Fantasy Football Today. Please welcome Dave Richard to the program. Dave, it's great to have you on. How are you?
Oh, John, greetings from South Florida. It's an overcast, like 90-degree day. I'm sitting outside on my patio, which has been my office for the last year. And it's great to hear your voice, and it's great to talk about Chicago and the Bears and the fantasy season. Listen, man, you've got to get ready for your draft. You're probably going to be drafting your fantasy team sometime in the next 70 days. So it's time to prepare and get ready to kick your friends' butts in their league again.
Well, who's your top fantasy pick at each position this year to start? What should I be doing to win my fantasy league?
Well, what you should be doing to win your fantasy league and who the top pick is at each position are very different things. I think that it's and they're very different answers. I think you could probably guess who the best picks are at each position, the top guy at each position. But here's a hint. Most of them are Kansas City Chiefs, and it's because that's an offense that's very explosive, and it's a lot of points that are scored. Mahomes is unbelievable as a quarterback. He's got the most upside of any quarterback, and that's saying something because there are a lot of quarterbacks that can give you, you're looking for like 25 points per week in a league where it's 6 points for a passing touchdown, probably closer to 20 or 21 if it's 4 points for a passing touchdown. And Mahomes is that dude. Travis Kelce, John, has been the number one tight end in PPR leagues 5 straight years.
Wow.
Do you need me to say anything else about why he's the top tight end? Do you really want me to go on for another 30 seconds? Because I won't. Wide receiver, I'll go running back next. Christian McCaffrey played only 3 games last year. Guess what? He's still the guy that everybody's going to take first. He's been incredibly consistent at delivering monster fantasy numbers. In a PPR league, you're looking for at minimum 15 points per week. He's giving you that in 30 of his past 35 games. That's an 86% hit rate. Now, it used to be pretty good when I got an 86% on like a test in school when I went to Rich Central in the southern suburbs. In fantasy football, 86%, that's like getting 120% on a test. So it's outstanding. Really no question that Christian McCaffrey is the top pick at running back. But wide receiver is a little bit different for me, John. And I think it's contingent on who the quarterback is for the Green Bay Packers. If Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback, Devontae Adams is my favorite receiver, but only in leagues where catches count. If catches do not count, you only get credit for yards and touchdowns, then I'll go with Patrick Mahomes' best receiver, Tyreek Hill. And if Aaron Rodgers is traded, which I'm sure that everybody in Chicagoland is hoping for at this point, then Tyreek Hill would take that spot as the number one receiver in fantasy, regardless of format. Now, what to do in order to win your leagues? Here's the pointer that I'm going to give you first and foremost is take a look at rankings before you draft. And this is a pre-draft exercise. You can look at my rankings or whoever's rankings you like, or if you're really into it, John, your own rankings. You're going to need to create a dividing line for where the running backs are that you're not comfortable taking as a starter for your team. So, for example, everybody will take Christian McCaffrey to be their starter. That's no problem. Ezekiel Elliott, most people will take him. You get to David Montgomery or Miles Sanders, and some people might get a little squeamish at that. Or they'll get to Travis Etienne or Leonard Fournette or Raheem Mostert, and you might say, all right, no, those guys are not starters for my fantasy team. The fewer running backs that you have that you would consider starters for your team, the more likely you need to attack that position in your draft immediately. Don't even bother with Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill or Devontae Adams. Go after running backs with your first 2 or 3 picks. But that depends on just how many running backs you like and are comfortable starting. That's the very first thing that everybody has to do before they get into their draft to help them be in a position where they feel comfortable with their team when they're done drafting.
Where would you take a quarterback? I've heard Fields have thought that the last round is the best. I've heard people say first or second round. Where would you take a quarterback?
I would take a quarterback and this is just me not necessarily answering your question directly because there's some context to it. I'm looking for a fair value, if not a good value, at quarterback. And now maybe a year or two ago, John, I would have told you want to steal your quarterback. You want to draft your quarterback at a spot where you can't believe that he's still there. And the eyes are popping out of your head, and it just feels like you're ripping off the rest of your league. I don't think you can do that anymore. I think that we're at a point now where there are a certain amount of quarterbacks that have great upside, and then a bunch of quarterbacks that have good upside, and then other quarterbacks that have good upside, but you don't feel quite as good about them. And I can explain. Looking at my own quarterback rankings, I've got Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott. 5 quarterbacks. I think they're all worth taking somewhere between rounds 3 and 6. Okay. And if I can get any one of them, in that spot, I'm thrilled. I'll take them. I'm not interested in taking Mahomes in round 1 or round 2. And this is assuming that I can only start one quarterback. There are some leagues where you can start multiple quarterbacks. In those leagues, you're going to take quarterbacks early. There's just nothing you can do about it. But I'm looking for a good value from one of those great quarterbacks. If I can find one, and usually when I draft with a bunch of other fantasy nerds, they're waiting on quarterbacks, I'm taking advantage. I'm getting Josh Allen in round 5. I'm getting Dak in round 6. Okay, and I'm very comfortable taking Dak. I think he'll be right back to where he was pre-injury. And if I don't get one of them, I'm not going to cry over it. I'm just going to wait until I can get somebody like Justin Herbert in round 7, Russell Wilson in round 7 or 8, Aaron Rodgers and Jalen Hurts in rounds 8 or 9. And then once I'm past that group of quarterbacks, I look at who's left and it's, oh, darn, it's Tom Brady. Oh, shucks, it's Ryan Tannehill, who now has Julio Jones to throw to. Oh, diddly dee, it's Joe Burrow, who's got tons of upside. But you kind of get where I'm coming from. Those quarterbacks don't run very much. Tannehill will, Burrow a little. They don't run a lot, which is what gives the value to Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray and Josh Allen and Dak Prescott. But they throw really well, and they've got some great receivers to throw to, and I can still get them in round 9, 10, 11, 12. Look at me. It's that rich central education showing you that I can still count. But the point is that I can still wait. I can wait to get quarterbacks and feel good about starting Tom Brady in week 1, Ryan Tannehill in week 1. Tannehill's got a great schedule to begin the year, by the way. He's going to be like, he'll be a top 5 quarterback in September. I'm not sure if he'll be a top 5 quarterback by the time we get to December, but he'll get you off to a hot start. But I'm looking for value, John. I want a quarterback that I can find that can help me build my roster at other positions and still feel really good about the value in which I get that quarterback. And if I could add one other thing,
sure.
There are a few quarterbacks that carry. I told you, like they've got really good upside, but their downside is pretty significant too. And I'll give you their names. There's 3 of them, and I'll throw in a 4th that's just for you, John. The 3 are Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, and Trey Lance, and the 4th is Justin Fields. And this comes down to, it's situational for Watson. Obviously, look, once he's actually allowed to play, because we think right now that he might not be allowed to play because of what's going on with him off the field. If he's allowed to play, his value will shoot up. He'll be a top 12 quarterback, but you can draft him now in round 10 or 11 and just kind of sit on him and hope that he can, play. You might be throwing the pick away. He might not be able to play, but we have to wait and see. We know Trevor Lawrence is going to play. And the reports from Jacksonville are that he's already fitting in perfectly. And I kind of felt like he would, because he's running the same type of offense there that he ran in Clemson. And it's the same offense that he ran in high school. So there's no learning curve for him. He's somebody that you can draft late and has a really good upside. And Trey Lance is also somebody else. Not my dog, by the way. Trey Lance is somebody else who could end up being unbelievable, but he's got to get the starting job. And the same thing with Justin Fields. I know it looks like Justin Fields won't start week 1. It doesn't mean that he won't start week 2, But Justin Fields has a chance to be a very special quarterback, both for the Bears and in fantasy football. Those are quarterbacks that I'm going to look for with late picks. And I'm going to draft them with the intention of being patient and quiet and cool with them. And hopefully by October, they're making plays for my team. And if I need a quarterback, I'll start them. And if I don't need a quarterback, then I can trade them if they're hot. And if they stink, then I cut them and I lose a 10th round pick. It's not the end of the world.
Dave Richard here on Sports Talk Chicago. Dave, you mentioned Justin Fields. What was your reaction when the Bears initially drafted him?
I was excited for Bears fans. And I thought it was actually the move that Ryan Pace had to make, not just to preserve his job, but to give the organization some life at quarterback. And my guess is that everyone knew that the Bears would overpay to move up in the draft, and that everybody knew that the Bears were desperate for a quarterback. And I can't believe that it wasn't a team in front of the Giants that took advantage of it, but the Giants were the team that did. And I thought it was what Ryan Pace had to do. Now, it just so happens that Fields was my second favorite quarterback in the draft class. I really loved what I saw from him at Ohio State. There were some bad games that he struggled in. I think that Justin tends to kind of feel after effects once he gets blitzed a lot. And I think that's something that can be worked on, and a quarterback can, improve his short-term memory, so to speak, so that he's not, playing in even like a small semblance of fear. But he moves really well. He's a great fit for this offense. He's a great fit for almost any offense because he's got a strong arm and he seems smart. And yeah, there were some times where it seemed like he was only reading half the field, but you've got to remember, if you're making one read, you're only reading one receiver, and that receiver's open. That's the only read you have to make. So I think that Justin Fields has a chance to be really, really helpful and good for the Bears. And any quarterback that can run as much as I think Justin Fields is going to run is going to be good for fantasy as well. So I thought it was a good move for Chicago.
You like the strategy to not start him week one?
No, I think it's dumb to commit to that now. The only thing I can think of is that when the Bears signed Dalton, they promised him he would be the week one starter.
Okay.
So that's the only thing I can think of, because otherwise, why wouldn't you have a quarterback competition in training camp? Because it sounds if it's not that, if that promise wasn't made, and Matt Nagy can't say that we promised him that, but if that promise wasn't made and they're still guaranteeing that Andy Dalton's going to be the starter week one, that means something's not right with Justin Fields, and he's not doing what the Bears thought that he could do, which would concern me as a football observer and should scare Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace as the guys that made the move to trade up to get Justin Fields. But, I read the Trib and the Sun-Times and the Daily Herald, and everybody says that Justin Fields looks fine. And I'll talk to my buddies in Chicago, and they'll tell me that Justin Fields looks fine. So my guess, John, is that they promised Dalton when they signed him that he would be the week one starter. And my guess is that by the time the Bears are 0-3, it's going to be Justin Fields' time to come in. And then you're going to see this offense really look a lot different. I think it's got a chance to be really, really outstanding with Justin Fields. And that's a slight Andy Dalton. Dalton's a serviceable quarterback. He's been that way in the NFL for a long time. But he can't do some of the things that Justin Fields can. He won't run like Justin Fields. I don't think his arm is as strong as Justin Fields' arm. And I would be willing to bet that if they had some sort of quarterback challenge competition, Justin Fields would be more accurate than Andy Dalton. So it's a matter of time. Everybody knows it. Andy Dalton knows it too. But if it were me, I would say that, the best man is going to be the starting quarterback in week one. And that's how it should be. The fact that it's not seems a little weird.
Yeah, how do you feel about that? I mean, wouldn't it make sense just to put in Fields if he shows in training camp he's better? Why would you commit and tell Andy Dalton, or supposedly tell Andy Dalton, you're going to start week one no matter what? I don't understand that.
John, if they had told him that in March before the draft, I would totally understand that. Because maybe Andy Dalton was weighing a similar offer from another team, and he was looking for a commitment to be the starter. And one team said, no, we can't commit to that. And all the Bears had to say is, yeah, we'll commit to that. And Andy signed. And remember, there was once a point where the Bears didn't have Andy Dalton or Justin Fields at quarterback this offseason. So they were probably desperate to get Andy Dalton when he was on the table. So they said they might have promised him that. And, it's good that they live up to their promises. You don't want to be a jerk and make promises that you can't keep. That's just good life advice, not just, NFL coach advice. But they got to follow through with it if they've really promised it. But we'll see what happens. But at the same time, dude, if it's totally clear that Justin Fields is the better quarterback, Andy Dalton will probably know it. He's going to get paid the same either way. Maybe they just go to him and say, look, we got to do what's best for the team. We know what we promised you, but come on. Don't you want to win? Don't you want to be a part of, a team that wins this year? We think we've got a chance to really win with this special young quarterback. Matt Nagy can always talk his way back from it. If Justin Fields plays like, a superstar and Andy Dalton plays like Andy Dalton.
Do you trust Matt Nagy in general in handling this situation based on his track record?
That's probably a question that's better suited for the beat writers in Chicago than it is for a fantasy writer in Florida. But just listen, has Matt Nagy made some terrible decisions? Yeah, he's made some decisions that haven't been great. And, maybe they stuck with Mitchell Trubisky a little bit too long, and maybe getting Nick Foles and trading for him like they did was probably not the right thing to do. I don't know how much of that is on Nagy versus Ryan Pace. I feel much better criticizing Pace than I do Nagy. Nagy's just doing the best that he can, but I also think he's good at motivating the players. I think the players buy into what he's doing. I think he knows what to look for in players that fit his offense. So I'm going to credit him for that. He seems like a good person and a good coach overall. There were some times last year where the offense looked like a total mess. But some of that could have been pinned on the quarterbacks that Chicago had. And this is also a team that beat the Super Bowl champions the eventual Super Bowl champions last year. You can't do that with bad coaching. So I think Nagy deserves this year. And if Justin Fields plays well, he deserves another year on top of it. I'm not ready to say that I don't trust Matt Nagy to make important decisions with the Bears.
What's your expectation for the Bears this year overall?
I don't think they're gonna. I don't think they're gonna be very good overall. The longer they stay with Dalton, the more likely that's going to be the case. I've already told you that they're going to start 0-3 if Dalton's the quarterback. But if Justin Fields is real deal and Khalil Mack comes to play, they need to find more pass rush help next to Khalil Mack. And I know that they think they've got something with Robert Quinn and the other players that they've added. But the two things that stick in my craw when it comes to this defense is, number one, the pass rush should be amazing because they have Khalil Mack, and on paper it's just kind of solid. It's not great. They've had better pass rushes in the past. I wish they had more up front, and they've got good defensive linemen. And I wish that there was more there. I hated that they cut Kyle Fuller, and I really wish Fuller was still on the team because then the secondary would be that much stronger. So I've got questions about the secondary. I've got questions about the pass rush. We know that it's a first-year defensive coordinator. The defense worries me. The offense will hinge on Fields. There's really no other way about it. If Justin Fields is great and he adapts and acclimates right away, then this offense is going to be a lot of fun. They're going to put up points and they're going to be in a lot of games. But if he's not quite ready, or if it's Andy Dalton under center, this team's going to lose a lot of games. And there should be some heartbreakers in there. And if they lose too many games, then you know what that means for Ryan Pace and probably for Matt Nagy too at this point.
Is a playoff appearance out of the question? Could you see that happening, or a path in which that could happen?
What division is Aaron Rodgers playing in this year, John? Let's start right there. If he's in the NFC North, I don't think a playoff appearance is going to happen, because not only do I think the Packers will compete for the NFC North crown, go look and take a detailed look at what the Vikings did to their defense this offseason, because their defense was ugly last year. They had guys opt out because of COVID and other guys got hurt, and they did not have a pass rush, and they paid for it dearly. And now they've got themselves a defensive front that I think is going to be pretty good, and their secondary looks very good. And Mike Zimmer is a genius. So I'm I'm a big fan of what the Vikings could look like this year. And honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if the Vikings won the division. I think that they're going to be the top team in the North. And if the Packers are going to compete with them for that crown, well, that means the Bears are going to be no better than third place. And they should be no worse than third place because the Lions look like an absolute mess. They've got no pass rush. When you look at them, they've got some brothers, I think. The Okara brothers, I think, are both there, maybe, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't see that defense being very good at all. Those will be games that the Bears can win. And then you're looking at the rest of the division, I just think that there are too many other teams that can contend for wildcard spots. One of them clearly going to be in the NFC North if Rodgers is there. So I don't think the playoffs are going to be a realistic possibility for Chicago unless Justin Fields is the man. And if he's the man, then you will see the Bears at least, flirt with a playoff spot, kind of like they did last year.